Your work here is not to force this leap. It is truly to become the version of yourself who is ready to live differently. Welcome to Intuition Unlocked, the podcast empowering empathic women who feel misunderstood, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their intuition, begin to trust their sensitivities, find inner clarity, and show up with embodied, unstoppable confidence in their daily lives. I am your host, Olivia Ashley, an empath and intuitive, and I am so happy you're here. Hello, and welcome back to Intuition Unlocked. It's your host, Olivia Ashley here, and today we're going to talk about something that's been coming up everywhere lately, which is quantum leaping, timeline shifts, and jumping into a new version of your life. You may have heard people in your spiritual or intuitive spaces talking about this idea of suddenly becoming a new version of yourself, collapsing time, or moving into a higher timeline. And there is so much truth and beauty in this concept, and yet I also find there's a lot of confusion, misunderstanding, or sometimes pressure layered into the way it's talked about. So today, I want to use this time to dive into this topic, unpack it, and help you be able to understand it in a way that you can use it to change your life, to shift whatever you're wanting to shift, and become a better version of you. In this episode, we're going to explore what quantum actually refers to and how it connects to personal change, what quantum leaping is and what it is not, and how real lasting leaps can happen through intuition, identity, and embodied action, not just force or fantasy. Because the truth is, massive life shifts do happen, but they don't happen by magic alone. They happen when identity, nervous system, belief, and action align, which makes up the essence of quantum leaping. I want to start us off by helping you understand where this language of quantum leaping comes from. In physics, we see quantum referring to something moving in discrete jumps rather than gradual steps. And then there's this concept of quantum field that is relevant to understand with this topic of quantum leaping, which refers to the underlying energetic field that everyone in existence emerges from. In more simple terms, it's the idea that at the most fundamental level, reality is not made of solid fixed things, but it's made of energy, probability, and information interacting constantly. Nothing is completely static in our reality, and time is not always experienced in the neat linear way we perceive it in daily life. In the quantum field, possibilities exist before they become physical outcomes. With this understanding, when you hear spaces talk about the quantum field, they're often referring to this deeper idea that life holds many potential pathways, and which one becomes tangible and realized is influenced by attention, belief, environment, decision, and action. And in other words, you are constantly interacting with possibility in your life, shaping what outcomes become real through the identities you embody and the choices you reinforce. The ideas of quantum and quantum field are really the foundation of where the concept of a quantum leap comes from. But what I often see not happening is the translation of quantum leap and the ideas behind it into language that you can really understand and use. That's where I see personal development language really helping us here. Because quantum leaping doesn't mean magically skipping reality. I think that's what we often feel or want to think happens. And there is some type of magic, divine force that is at play that we can't fully understand. I don't want to take away that essence of it. What I really have come to understand it as is it means that sometimes change doesn't appear gradually on the surface. Instead, once your internal alignment reaches a certain threshold, your life reorganizes quickly around it. And that is what feels like a sudden jump forward, a leap forward into another space. So when we talk about quantum leaping, what we're really talking about is the moment when inner evolution reaches the point where external life begins shifting rapidly to match it. When you hear people say quantum leap, they're usually referring to moments where their life appears to shift quite dramatically in a short period of time. Hence, it's quantum. They're jumping versus taking steps. leaps. So we usually are hearing this when people are having a sudden career change or a rapid expansion of their opportunities or a deep internal identity shift or meeting the right people at the right time or stepping into a version of themselves that previously felt distant or far away. And from the outside, these moments can look instantaneous, like someone truly jumped timelines. Yet what we often don't see is that these leaps are usually preceded by internal preparation that has been happening quietly for months or even years. Because growth accumulates until it reaches a threshold where change becomes visible. And that moment is when that quantum leap takes place. That's what feels like a quick jump or shift. So understanding that, I also want to talk about how this can give us a perception that things just happen for some people and not for others, that some are just really good at manifesting or changing their life and stepping into this quantum field and boom, their life is different. Yeah, in reality, a lot of work goes into it. And the other biggest misunderstanding I see happening in this space is that quantum leaping can mean escaping your current reality or bypassing the inner work required for transformation. Again, you think it and you see it, or I showed up in a new way and my whole life reoriented in this quantum leap. But what I want to dispel is that when people go through this leap, it doesn't mean that they pretended challenges didn't exist, or they're forcing positivity or skipping the emotional processing, or even just waiting for the universe to magically change everything overnight. I think it's portrayed sometimes as being something you don't have to put a lot of work into. You just have to shift your mindset. Yet I want you to be empowered here. I want you to really understand the possibility with quantum leaping, because I do believe it is something really grand and amazing that you can harness. So true leaps happen when you become available for a different life, internally and externally first. And this looks like when your nervous system can hold more, when your beliefs expand enough to allow new outcomes, when your identity begins to shift, and when your actions begin aligning with the future you say you want. That's when change accelerates. Not because time somehow collapsed in this quantum field. In a way, it does with the energy, but it's because resistance was reduced and you opened yourself up to that new potential timeline, to that new path and that new possibility through your actions, through your essence, and through alignment internally. And then externally, things shift quite rapidly to meet your new frequency, to meet your new energy. And so sometimes you see someone's life change really dramatically and it feels quite sudden. But what's often happening when we see these stories, these really miraculous, magical examples of quantum leaps, it's often happened because they finally made a long delayed decision, or they stopped abandoning their intuition and nervous system. They changed the environment they were living in, and they started acting consistently from a new identity. And once identity shifts, their behavior shifts. And when your behavior shifts, opportunity shifts. And when opportunity shifts, life changes quickly. Yet on social media or in these spaces, we don't talk always about all those things that happened that led us up to this leap, led us up to the opportunity to have a quantum shift. So what looks like a miracle moment and feels like a miracle moment for you and for us, and I don't want to discount that, but underneath it's often a compounded readiness moment. This is empowering to understand because it means leaps are not reserved for any special or few people. They become possible for anyone whenever your internal alignment reaches a tipping point. That's where the magic happens. And in my own life, the biggest leaps didn't happen the moment something external changed. They happened the moment something internal settled within me and I knew I would never go back. So one of the clearest examples I can offer you of what people might call a quantum leap wasn't when something externally suddenly appeared. It was when I shifted internally from fear and hiding into using my own voice. Because there was definitely a time in my life when speaking up felt uncomfortable and I simply didn't do it, where I would not share my thoughts publicly and I stayed smaller than I knew I was meant to be because it felt safer to stay quiet than be seen. And that came from conditioning, and there was a ton of reasons for it. But when I realized that that wasn't actually my true essence, that shifted how I started to show up and investigate into this. I started choosing expression over hiding. I began trusting the nudges that told me to speak up, to write, to share what was on my heart, even when I didn't feel fully ready or I still felt scared of the outcome or being judged. And that shift for me from silence into more expression, from self-doubt into embodied confidence, led to decisions that changed the direction of my life. In my corporate career, I went from quietly working on projects behind the scenes to actually leading a team. And I moved from only examining and exploring ideas that I loved and was passionate about with myself and my friends to starting this podcast without really knowing what I was doing, just knowing that I wanted to help women trust themselves more, listen to their intuition, and live more truthfully. And what's beautiful is that what began as a simple act of sharing from the heart eventually grew into this podcast that now sits in the top 5% globally and reaches listeners in over 120 countries. So from the outside, if I just shared this story of where I was to where I am now, that can look like a sudden leap. Yet internally and even externally, it was built through small moments of choosing courage over hiding, expression over silence, and trust over fear. And then that inner state shifted to having external opportunities come forward. That's what most real quantum leaps look like. They begin as identity shifts, and then life reorganizes around the person you've become. It's important to understand you won't just leap into a new life randomly. You will leap into the life your identity is now capable of sustaining. So it's really important to understand what you're actually creating or calling forward from where you're sitting. And if we actually translate the concept of a quantum leap into a grounded language and formula, quantum leaps tend to occur when 4 things align. The first one is identity shift. This means you stop seeing yourself as an old version of who you were, and you begin to embody the version of yourself you are wanting to become. The second one is nervous system capacity. When you become able to tolerate visibility, responsibility, growth, or uncertainty without shutting down, you show the universe that you have more capacity, that your energy is ready for more, and you live in a more expansive state with your nervous system steady and strong. The third one is belief expansion. You begin to believe new outcomes are possible for you, not just for others. And that leads to the fourth piece, aligned action. When you begin behaving in ways that match the future you want, even before full confidence arrives, then that solidifies that you are ready for new opportunities, next level growth, a true shift in your external state of being, but you've done the work. Because when you begin behaving in ways that match the future you want, even before the full confidence arrives, your experience shifts. What you're offered changes. You show up with new energy, with new personality even, and new frequency. And so the reality that you were living in simply can't stay the same because you're no longer who you were. So when these 4 elements converge, life often begins changing faster than expected. And this is really rooted in frequency, in this quantum field, and in the knowing that there are multiple possibilities of pathways that you can experience in life. And when you start tweaking certain things about yourself, about your identity, about your nervous system, your beliefs, your actions, you tune to a new path, you tune to a new space, and that's what brings the leap. There is this literal acceleration and jump point that shifts you into a new path. So with what I just described, people sometimes describe this part as shifting timelines. It's part of the quantum leaping. And what this often means is energetically, you have stopped feeding the patterns that were reinforcing your old life trajectory, and you've begun reinforcing different ones. So when you make different decisions, you enter different environments, you surround yourself with different conversations and hold yourself differently, life begins to shift. Because life responds to patterns, and you have changed your patterns through those changes. And with that, a new pathway opened. So while all this language may sound mystical, the mechanism behind all of this is often pattern interruption followed by identity reinforcement. So when you can grasp that, you can invite a leap into your own life. So instead of asking, how do I quantum leap instantly? Some more powerful questions are, who am I becoming? What version of me would feel normal in the life I desire? What would she choose today? What does she need to become more like her in this moment? From there, show up and support your nervous system. Follow your intuition with grounded action. Visualize and unblock the fears you need to, and visualize yourself in this new state of being. And allow change to be embodied. Feel her, express her, live her. It does not have to be rushed, but at some point, things will shift. And some other tangible starting points that can help get you on your path towards your quantum leap can be making the decisions you've been postponing. Stop negotiating with something you know is complete. Change the environment that keeps reinforcing your old identity. Begin acting from your future self standards in small daily ways. And strengthen your nervous system through regulation practices so you can hold expansion. Leaps are not always about massive action either. Often they begin with consistent coherence within you and identity level shifts. The real secret is that most transformation happens quietly, not quickly. You grow in ways no one sees. You're processing things internally. You're building new emotional capacity. And all those things help you outgrow old stories. And you outgrow old stories slowly. Then one day, a decision is made, an opportunity appears, a door opens, and it looks and feels sometimes like everything changed overnight. Yet in reality, you've been becoming the person capable of walking through that door for a very long time. So if you've been hearing about quantum leaping and wondering whether it's real or not, here's the grounded truth I want to leave you with. Life can change faster than you expect. But it's not because you suddenly or miraculously escaped your current reality with no effort. It's because you evolved beyond the patterns that were holding this reality in place. Your work here is not to force this leap. It is truly to become the version of yourself who is ready to live differently. That's what's going to give you sustainable change. And when readiness meets opportunity, that change is going to accelerate. You will see the shifts. So instead of asking yourself, when will my life shift? You might begin asking, where am I already growing beyond the version of myself I used to be? And what would it look like to trust that growth enough to act from it? Because sometimes the leap isn't something that happens to you. We like to share those stories. We like to show off the big changes in our life that make us feel better. Yet when we do that, we don't help each other understand what it took to get to those spaces. Because those leaps we see actually come from something you become ready for and then step into. And those are the stories we should share more of. Those are the pieces I want to hear talked about. And that's why I did this episode, in hopes to unpack what we're seeing in an effort to give you the actual tools to create quantum leaps and timeline shifts in your life if you want them. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please send it to a friend who really wants to make a change in their life but doesn't know how. Thank you again for being here and a part of this community. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on Intuition Unlocked. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of insight, guidance, or intuitive inspiration. To dive deeper into our community and get access to exclusive content, head to my website at www.olivia-ashley.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You can also connect with me on Instagram at wildlyolivia for daily inspiration and updates. Remember, your intuition is your superpower. Trust it, nurture it, and let it guide you. Until next time, I'm Olivia Ashley, and I can't wait to connect with you again.